What's up? Welcome back to Where Are All My Friends? Cool episode this week. A little bit different from the normal episodes we do, but in a very good way. This week's guest is Vivian Wang. She works at AEG and teaches at USC. And the reason this is a cool episode is we definitely get into her story like we do in every episode, but we also spend a lot of time on the back end of this episode talking, kind of more just having an open discussion about some things that we think are happening in music, and me picking her brain, getting some advice from her, or bouncing back and forth ideas of where we think things are going with the touring industry and how data affects that and what artists and industry can do to work with that data. So it was the first time I got to have like a back and forth discussion and kind of just talk that out, but it ended up being really fun, and she's really smart and very good at data. So for that reason, it was really fun, and I think you guys will enjoy that. She also has a great story in getting into it and where she came from and the amount of things that she tried and did before she really found her lane in music. It's just awesome. So for all that, I think it became or is a very great episode, and that's really that. Another thing that I wanted to say that we didn't get into in the podcast is Vivian's fiance, Court, is incredible and helped her so much through all of that. And we finished the episode and realized, like, damn, we got so in the weeds with some of it that we didn't really talk about the bigger picture. So huge shouts to Court, because if it weren't for him, she wouldn't have had the support through some of the things that she did. And he was a really important piece. So much love. With that said, same thing that I always say. If you like this episode, tell your friends, share it on social media, rate it on Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. It means the world to me. It helps me immensely. That's really it. Let's get into it. I think you're going to love it. Here we are. Where are all my friends? I am joined with my dear friend, Vivian Wang. It is Sunday. We are sipping some coffee, chilling, and I'm excited for this episode because you're one of my smartest friends when it comes to this subject, and I'm so happy that you're down to come on and answer some of these questions and talk about this, because whenever I do an episode of this show, I don't really care about the following. I don't care about the status or any of that. I care about smart people with things to add and value to bring, especially when I think about somebody who's maybe trying to get into the industry and doesn't understand all these pieces. I think there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that not everybody knows that's really valuable and cool to hear. And you can use a lot of that data to, as an artist, learn more about how to sell tickets and do things. Or maybe early in your career, you don't know that jobs like this exist. So you're my low-key sneaky friend that knows so much. So I'm very stoked and honored to have you.
No, thank you so much for having me. And I definitely looked at your resume of people you've had on the show. I'm like, oh, wow, I am the least interesting with the least number of followers on the show. So thank you. I'm honored to be on here.
But I guarantee you that everyone, including myself and all the guests, would hear your episode or look at you and understanding what you know would all be like, I'm sorry, what? Go on. And that's exactly why I want to have you.
Oh, thank you.
The other thing that I should preface is you work with large companies, you teach at USC, and that's kind of an awkward thing to do a podcast with, because you have to be careful, like your opinions, you speaking on all the things that we talk about, like by no means do I want you to put words in the mouths of these large companies or these schools.
Absolutely. So yeah, everything that I say is like purely my opinion with you as a friend. Doesn't represent the opinions of USC or AEG Presents. It's just me talking to you.
So what I thought would be cool, and what I wanted to do is briefly tell your story. Like, definitely tell me where you come from, tell me how you got into this. But I also think that we have these discussions a lot about Spotify data or just data in general, and how artists can use that to improve their products, and how companies, managers, anyone else can better understand artists, how shows can be better for people. Just like, I think there's a lot of data that isn't used, or it feels boring or overwhelming. And then when I talk to you, I'm like, oh, wait, this matters. Like, we can use this. This is fun. This is helpful. This is good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And you have a very good skill at that, of making data feel more like something helpful than an overwhelming Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you very much. That's very flattering.
Coming down to all the cool pie charts and colors that you can make and everything, like, you make me feel smart when we look at it. So hopefully I can get a little bit out of that, or a little bit of that out of you, and help other people listening use data better.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure that it's valuable for the listeners.
Yeah, cool. So before we get into some of the questions and before that technical stuff, tell a listener a little bit about you, what you do now, and where you come from.
So I grew up in Saratoga, California. This is a town in the Bay. I've been there my whole life, and started going to shows when I was like 12 years old, right? Local shows, just your local bands.
Yeah.
Loved it. That was my real first taste of like live music.
Yeah.
My parents were immigrants, so everything that I found in music, I found myself. Like, I had no influence from them.
Yeah.
So I very much gravitated towards like a lot of the classic Warped Tour bands.
Cool.
A little cringy for my fiance, Under Oath, Taking Back Sunday.
I don't think that's cringe at all. Like, I love that.
My heroes, like, defined my listening taste when I was growing up. And then for my 16th birthday, I wanted to it was very natural for me to be like, okay, I've been going to these shows for like 4 years. Like, I'm like friends with these guys, like friends with the bands. Like, I want to put on a show for my 16th birthday. And I just did $250 flats for everybody. And that was the first show I ever put on. From there, I just started doing more and more local shows.
That's wild though. Like, that's so cool that you had that initiative on your own, right? Because a lot of kids can like music and find it themselves, but not have the idea to like book a show or to have that ambition. So I respect that you had that early. That's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you when you put it like that, it sounds like very like, I don't know, like prestigious and intense, but I was literally just a 15-year-old girl being like, I want to see all these bands play together and experience that.
So to you, it wasn't like you were taking on some big risk or was anything?
I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I just wanted to see them, and I was like, hey, like, $200 guarantees all around, cool, dope. See you guys Saturday.
It was just some pretty simple math. You're like, okay, if I can sell this many tickets and they're willing to get paid $250, $200, like, cool, this will work. And I get to see my favorite show.
And I wasn't trying to make money by any means. It was like my birthday party.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that those like accidental moments of just like you being excited, like being like, well, logically I want this. And then like later on you realize you're like, oh wait, that was cool. Or like, oh, that taught me something really important.
Yeah. It was like, how to like, figure out the gear, like PA system, like all that stuff. And it was like a great first show. And then just started doing some local shows. One day, one of the local promoters was like, hey, like, I see you hustling. I see you doing these shows. Like, come, let's have lunch, dinner. Like, let's just chat. I was like, 16, 17 now. And I was like, okay, cool. And he was like, let's not compete. Like, let's just, like, it was an interesting time because I feel like the local promoters were all consolidating at that moment.
Yeah.
So there was like 3 big guys, and it was me. And they were like, he was very much like olive branch, like, just come, like, let's just do shows together. And I was like, okay. So I just started booking some shows for him, but also just like working shows, like every single opportunity I could get. And that's how I started doing that. And then I went to USC, double majored in neuroscience and music business. Also, when I was at USC, I started interning for Kevin Lyman, which was such a dream come true for me as being a big Warped Tour kid.
Yeah.
Took one of the summers and tour managed on Warped Tour. I tour managed on Warped Tour, was also managing bands, managed this band called Ice Nine Kills back in the day.
What?
Yeah.
You managed Ice Nine Kills?
Yeah, I did their record deal with my then partner, with like Red Blue Records. It was like, it was a long time ago, man.
It's wild because they've had this like resurgence of great success.
Killing it. Those guys are killing it. I haven't talked to them in years, but they are really killing it.
Yeah, but it's amazing because I remember they're like an OG band from that genre. Like, I remember like very back in the day hearing that name. I had no idea that you did anything with them. That's amazing.
I like still can't believe it's like I've kind of lived like a bunch of different lives. the record that I did with them was, I think, their sophomore record at this point. So it was really, really early on. It was Safe as Just a Shadow. That was a record I did with them.
Wow.
It was so good. Fucking love that album.
So at that point, like that's honestly, even if you didn't realize what you were doing, that's a lot of things coming together in a really cool way where, you know, that promoter didn't have to reach out to you. He could have just been a dick and been like, oh, you're some kid, whatever. Yeah, right? Like so many petty people do things like that. So that's cool. I'm sure you learned a bunch from that experience.
100%.
Gives you the nudge to then be like, oh, I could help a band. Or again, I'm sure it wasn't some mastermind plan, but you're like, oh, I know this and this, and I could help you with this. Mm-hmm. And then were you doing that still while you were in the Bay Area before school?
Tour managing? And
No. Before, like doing the Ice Nine stuff?
I was at USC.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So just so I have my timeline right, you're doing shows and kind of building a bit of a name for yourself while you're in the Bay Area.
And then I basically stopped doing that.
Okay.
And when I moved to SC, and I did put on some shows on Sunset for a minute.
Yeah.
With just some USC bands like that were going up, but I didn't. I had some like pretty career defining experiences.
Yeah.
Where I was like, this is not the path for me.
Okay.
So it was organic when one of the local bands that I was like booking when I was still in the Bay was like, I really, really believed in them, and they became like the first band I ever managed. Yeah. And then with that, I like joined this management company when I was still in school.
What?
That's where like Iceland Kills came along. It feels weird talking about it right now because it feels like I'm like, wait, but I did do that. Like it was like my life, but it was it was like 10 years ago.
Right.
I was like 19.
I don't know, like that's just wild because I know that feeling of when you think back and talk about it, you're like, oh man, that's a lot. But like in the moment, you're just like, well, I like music. And
I know. I never thought about it because I was like just so passionate. My passion for the music kind of overcame a lot of my future thinking. I was like, and also I was in school. It's like when you're in college, like that is the time to do just everything. Like I didn't waste any time in college. Like I was working always like 3 jobs, like interning, like tour managing, like I just did everything because I knew that as soon as I graduated, I'd have to support myself some way.
Whoa. So you had a good amount of young self-awareness or drive, just an organic something that kept you busy.
Yeah. And like a lot of that is like, I would say my upbringing, like, oh, this is so traumatic and I would never do this to my future children. But like my dad used to like walk me around and like point to homeless people and be like, don't do that. Don't be like that. And I'd be like, oh my God, like it was so traumatic as a child to like, but
you say that are you first generation, like born in the States?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's a thing where kids that have parents from anywhere else, like it's such a privilege to grow up in the States and they have experienced such 100%. A different life where it's not that they're trying to put this terrible pressure on you, but they're just like, you don't understand how much better it got that you have this opportunity.
Yeah.
Don't fuck it up.
Pretty much. And it's like they took I can't imagine like moving to a country where I don't speak the language, I don't know anybody, and just to like start over.
I have so much respect for families that do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like for the betterment of the next generation. It's very intense.
Yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, you're right.
So their love just translates differently. It came from the most caring place.
So I wasn't about to like waste my like 4 years at USC, one of the most expensive colleges, just like partying. Like I was very much like, no, this starts now.
That's really cool. Because you do hear the other sides of those stories, right? Where kids don't understand the opportunities that they have or they're not aware of it enough. And it is kind of just, why do I have to do this or whatever? They don't agree with it. And it becomes a waste. So it's cool to hear somebody that went to school and used it for what it's supposed to do, right?
Thank you. That sounds very flattering. But again, I was just like a kid being like, I'm just going to take every opportunity that I can and just see what happens.
Well, it's another really interesting topic right now. And I, again, love to have you on the podcast because I do feel that now more than ever, you don't have to go to college. Mm-hmm. However, here you are, like you teach a class in college. And when I talk to people like you, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I'd pay for a class for somebody teaching me that. But it's just an interesting topic, right? And I love to talk to people that did graduate school and are now like having success, because some people out there can't help, like their parents are forcing them to go to school, and like certain people are lost but still in school. So I don't want to be biased on it, right? Like even though my path wasn't college, I don't want to paint the picture that like fuck college. So I love hearing the stories, and I love hearing someone like you that like, yeah, I made the most of it. So it's cool.
And it's so important for these academic institutions, and even like, you know, the one that I work for, is like they have such a responsibility to make sure that that money is worth it, that degree is worth it, and they're going to better prepare those students for the next step in their careers. And that's I take that responsibility so seriously.
I love that.
When I teach at school, it's like these 2 hours, like they're paying good money to be here. They have to walk away with something valuable, and that's not something that I take lightly when I teach.
That's great. And like, again, you know, you are such a great example of that, and I love sharing that side, because there is that big thing of like, oh, college is such a waste of money, it's such they cost so much, this, that, and this. But it's like, here's somebody who takes it very seriously. He's going to do everything to give you value. So I love that. Anyway, your story. You make it down to Southern California. You're in LA, making the absolute most out of college, and you get an internship with Kevin Lyman, the OG of all OGs.
The Godfather.
The Godfather, the creator of Warped Tour, and the hardest working, best example of a human being in all of the music industry, in my opinion. So I would say that's a pretty good internship.
Yeah, I learned so much. I was so lucky for the opportunity. And it's like... I spent like 1 week, I remember, in the office just like organizing old tour offers that he had.
Wow.
You bet I read every tour offer.
Wow.
And I wasn't just like sorting paper. Like you'd get that opportunity and you look at every single deal, and you try and learn everything, you ask questions. It's not... Yeah, I was like organizing files, but it's like reading those files, like taking a step to understand, like you have access to something that not everyone has access to.
I try to remind myself that every day. Like there'll be things that I'm doing where I get so busy and I'm like, I need to just get all this done. But then you stop and you're like, wait, this is valuable, or this is an experience. There's more to be had than just the piece of like, do this task.
And that's what I tell like my employees today. It's like, okay, yeah, this task is maybe mundane, but you can get so much out of it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I have a employee right now who like wants to be a booking assistant. I'm like, you are in an epic place right now to be a booking assistant.
Yeah, you just have to find those little Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Were you nervous, like when you first, like I would have been nervous, like coming out of school being like, I have an internship with Kevin Lyman?
I remember walking those stairs in my USC sweatshirt. I just moved to LA. My heart was pounding. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to meet Kevin Lyman. And it was like, yeah.
How was he? Like, what was like your first interactions, or like, did you feel right at home, or how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I was so nervous that the whole thing was like an adrenaline 30 minutes. Yeah. And I think one of the most valuable things I learned from Kevin is to treat everybody equally, and like be a kind human and help wherever you can. Like every opportunity to help is something that you should take. And, as I grow older, like the message changes. Like more recently, it's like, I want everyone's interaction with me at work or out of work to be a positive one. And because like sometimes you work with someone and you like leave being that interaction, be like, oh, that was horrible. Like that didn't make me feel good. Yeah. I never want anyone to feel like that. And Kevin, like no matter if you're a merch guy, right?
Yeah.
Or like a lowly runner or whatever, like
anything.
And like so incredible. And
he said...
I just can't say enough good things, and I'm so grateful to have had that experience so young in my career, to be like, just treat everyone like, even the person that's like just a receptionist, like be nice, ask them how their day was, say hello. Like, yeah, I always try my best to do that no matter how busy or not a great mood I am. Cool.
And I agree with you. Like I respect him so much, and there are so few people that are that genuine,
especially in the music industry.
I think that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, right? Is like not everybody can go intern for somebody like him. And like I think that learning from the great people so early on is so formative in a career. So it's like, if I can at least share the words of the people that I think are special like that on this podcast, hopefully people will be inspired and take the right lessons. But that's cool. That's really cool that you had that experience there.
No, that's an incredible community that you're building at the moment, which is why, again, I'm so honored to be on this podcast.
Hell yeah.
When I was teaching at SC, this position came up, and I had just on a whim been like, because Warped Tour was ending, I was like, Kev, like, is this something you'd even be interested in? And I could tell he was hesitant. He took the meeting. He just had a couple of projects in the works, and I could just tell he was like hesitating. So I definitely like shot him an email saying like, you have been such like a guiding force in all the decisions that I make day to day in my role. And I think that your influence has been incredibly positive on my career. This is an opportunity for you to bring that influence to one of the best, and probably I was going to say one of the best educational institutions in the country, but definitely the number one music industry program in the country.
Fuck that, hit the sweet brag. Number one, the best in the world.
Best music industry program to influence these kids in like the next generation to be as like responsible, like kind of I told him, I was like, I graduated from the Kevin Lyman School of like concert promotion.
That's real though. Like,
so, and it's not just like the skills, but it's the attitude and the social responsibility that comes with, just being in the music industry and trying to be a positive impact.
It's how you treat people. Mm-hmm. I think that that's the biggest.
So critical.
And like, that's the thing is like, it's crazy for me now, like with all the stuff I've done with version 3 and with this next real wave of a new genre and kids making music that means something, it's the same as like when you found Under Oath and Senses Fail.
Oh my God, yes.
But not everybody's going to understand what Warped Tour did and what it meant. So the fact that he is teaching now and the fact that there is more of that.
He's influencing such hundreds of kids.
It needs to happen. It's so important.
I love that.
Like awesome.
I'm so happy he's there, and he teaches right before me. So I just I'm like, hey Kev, how's it going?
It's so cool.
I was really, after he sent me an email back being like, you need to go into politics.
Yeah, like you swayed me. You got that skill.
I won't take responsibility for being the only person to be his reason, but I'd like to think I helped a little. I
love that. Okay, well then continuing on your story, you have this incredible internship with him.
Yes, yeah, it was amazing.
And you then
tour managed.
Did a tour.
Yeah, managed Iceland Kills, did a record deal, gained that experience, made some money managing bands. That was cool.
Cool.
And then tour managed, realized that neither of those lives were for me because I couldn't. I'm not a gypsy. I'm not a road gypsy. I really have so much respect for the people that do that, who operate. I'm so much respect. But I realized that wasn't the life for me.
Yeah. At a pretty young age too.
Yeah, I was like 9. I was 19 when I started the tour, 20 when I got off the tour. And I remember there was one time on the bus, I was on the bottom bunk. And I woke up one morning and I was on my left side and the top bunk had collapsed on the right side. And I could have died. And I was like, well, or been severely injured. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. This life is not for me.
Yeah.
So it was there was a couple of factors like that where I was like, all right, this isn't my world.
Yeah. I don't know. I like that a lot though, because I think a lot of times people struggle with, you have something good and it's scary to change it. So not everybody does. So I respect, again, it probably wasn't that woke of you. You were probably just like, this isn't it. I'll keep going.
And it was, again, in college. So It's not like I needed, it was just try everything.
Yeah.
And then something that really, what resonates with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Which then takes us kind of to your next point of your career, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when I got off the road, did an internship in the Golden Voice talent buying department, which was really, really cool. And met Larry Vallon, who then I sent an email to sometime senior year. And he was like, listen, Live Nation Ticketmaster just merged. we are starting a ticketing company in response to that.
Wow.
Access. And this is a really exciting, it's an exciting place. Like Ticketmaster had run the game for so long. And the thing when I graduated at USC, when I went to school there, that we'd not talked about anything other than labels, like record deals, and like a little bit about concert promotion, a ton about publishing.
Yeah.
So I knew nothing about this world and didn't know anything like career-wise. But really, ticketing is the place where live and technology really started.
Yeah.
Like they are the center, like buying tickets online. Like that was the first place, right? So it was such a great 4 years that I spent there working really with marketing analytics and marketing data, marketing platforms. Like that was my career there.
And did you start to feel it clicking? Like more so than management and touring? You're just like, wait a minute, like I really am connecting here.
Yeah, definitely more so because it was so fresh, so new. And I didn't know there was so much that you could do. And that's when I was like really like sad about why didn't I know this before?
Yeah.
Because I think this is why it's so cool to do this podcast with you.
Literally, I'm thinking that right now. I'm so honored to have you explain things like this. Because even now, I still don't fully understand it.
Ticketing companies are playing a very instrumental role right now in the business. And it's commonly overlooked as just a transactional place. Absolutely. But there's so much more than that.
Yeah. Because we've had some cool conversations about it. I definitely want to get into these things of like, if you pay attention and work closely with your ticketing company, there's so much information available as an artist where you can really grow your platform and you can understand your fans more. And just like all sorts of sides of it where it just feels slept on. It feels like it's not talked about enough.
So I was like super grateful to have that experience, even though I was kind of feeling like I still felt the draw towards the live side, and I just felt like I was a little farther away from it than I would have liked to be, but I needed that. I needed those 4 years to understand technology, understand the data.
Right. So, which you now have such a great understanding of.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had that if I didn't spend those 4 years at Access.
So then Access goes to your next part of your career, brings you to...
So I then went over to AG Presents, worked on the digital team, doing like the marketing platform build, I would say.
Yeah.
So did that, and then an opportunity came up in the strategy department where it was really more like core booking concert operations, and that was like bringing me back to my roots of like shows, like booking shows, and that's like really where booking operations, concert promoter operations, and technology meet.
Oh, so
and
it's the dream.
Plus, like the research piece is something that's like a passion project of mine that is like really starting to like come together, which is so exciting. Like using data to gain insights and make those decisions day to day. So that's like, 9 years into the career, I feel like this is feeling really, really good right now.
That's awesome. And it's cool too, because, we look at these things, we look from the outside, and it's like seeing you do what you do and the way you talk about your job. It's like, yeah, cool. I get it. You have a superpower. You're great at that. Or like, must be nice to just have that great job. But it's like, really, you tried and did so many things, and also had opportunities within companies where you took risks to get to a spot 9 years in where you're like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And in the moment, you're kind of just following your intuition and your gut and like not being scared to understand what you don't know.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that a lot. That's a great way to put it so eloquently.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So that brings us to pretty much now.
Today,
Here you are. You're ripping. You're in it. Final form, or at least right now.
For the time being.
Last question on your path. When did you start teaching in colleges?
The chair of the music industry department reached out to me and was like, hey, like, I see you're we're redoing the curriculum at USC. And I was like, finally, like, yes, you should do that.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, like, this is what we're thinking. And what do you think, basically, as a graduate of this of the school
Oh,
and like
wow.
doing
So it
really
started
well.
as almost like just like a survey of
It was like a consulting, like, tell us what you think about this
Cool.
curriculum. It was so much better than what I had graduated with because that's such a focus on live, which
Yeah.
is so critical to any artist right now.
Yeah.
So the only thing I had to add was like, you really need a class on technology and like music tech and all the opportunities there and what data and analytics is in technology is in the music industry. And he was kind of like, well, what would a class like that look like? And I was like, well, you need to start with the ticketing companies and then like da 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 da. And he was like, oh, like, can you like put up a syllabus? And I was like, okay, here's like what I think the classes should be. And he was kind of like, let's get you to teach it. Like, you should just come teach this class. And
Sick.
so I think fall 2014
Oh, wow.
was when I started teaching.
And you've kept doing it since then.
Yeah, I teach 2 classes now. So one undergraduate, which is the OG one that I started, was big data and technology and live music. And then I also teach a master's class in data analytics and live music. I co-teach with my amazing partner, Mike Kaminsky, because
which is how we met.
I'm also at school at UCLA at the moment doing my MBA.
What?
And I'm getting married next year. So like I'm trying to plan a wedding. So like my life is insane.
This is Vivian in final form. This is full ripping right now.
I just haven't changed since I was like 16, I guess. It's just working like multiple jobs at the same time. It's like nuts.
I mean, I heavily do relate.
I know you do.
Well, that's an epic story. I love it. I learned some new things there. So something that we talked about and something that I think is going to be a really cool topic to just discuss with you is obviously there's been a shift of like so much success is happening from streaming. You're able as an independent artist to accomplish so much and like really build a career where you can make money off streaming. Yet the live side of it has changed a bit, but there's just these interesting pieces where it's like, what can you do? What's changing on the live side? What should you know as an artist? And what's that look like for the live side as this changes?
So again, this is like my opinion. Totally
opinions here, us as friends discussing.
Yeah, so it just feels like there's just more and more higher ticket prices. Like you can look at the data, ticket prices are just going up and up and up. Artists are just getting like asking for more and more money, all that stuff. And if you look at, it's funny because it just feels like we're all grabbing at that $1.
Yeah.
So putting it in like sort of academia terms, you have the highest threshold, like the cusp, is like the fans' willingness to pay for a ticket, right? The willingness to pay for a ticket, and then the second threshold is the price of the ticket. And the gap between those two levels is your fans' surplus, essentially. Like that's your fans' gain, where they're willing to pay and the actual price of the ticket. Now, the price, like I feel like there's not enough strategy when it comes on the artist side they're just trying to raise the price without increasing the fans' willingness to pay.
Right.
So you're just cutting and cutting into that fan surplus until there's literally nothing more, which isn't really a great way to run a business.
Yeah. So like with that's so interesting to me because again, like I say this from every side of it. If you're an up-and-coming artist, if you're a manager looking to grow an artist, any side, if you're a promoter trying to grow, like, I do feel that there's this thing of, like, you're not necessarily adding or providing any more value, yet there's this, like, inflation.
You're just trying to increase your ticket prices or, like, charge more money, charge more money so you can make more money. But really, the pie isn't getting any bigger. What you really should be focusing on is increasing the value you're giving to the fans, increasing their willingness to pay so that when you raise your price, you're not cutting into that fan delight, if you will. Yeah,
like you're bringing an extra value and you're building a closer connection with a fan to then justify a higher ticket price.
Essentially, yeah. And this is like, again, like I think we're all very driven by passion and gut, and your first instinct is just make more money, get more money, like take the biggest check. But that's not, you may be hurting your relationship with your fan more so if you were just to increase that threshold for them to their willingness to pay.
Well, and if you think about it, I don't think that necessarily has to cost you money or be a loss as far as the the business or the entity selling tickets. Like, I think about myself as a fan, and I hear all sorts of new music, so much more now because you can listen on the internet, or just things are served to you, right? Algorithms, all these things. So I hear these songs and I'm like, yo, this is fire. I love this track, whatever. But then I see that they're coming through. I know one song, it's on my Discover Weekly or whatever, and the ticket price is, I don't know, 25, 30 bucks. Maybe I'll go, it depends. But then if there's an artist where they're coming through, I know the same amount of music or whatever, but then I see that they, I don't know, like if I tweet about them or something and they like actually interact with me, or they then even like they put out a great music video, like something where I'm like, you know, I should go to this show because
I want to see that live.
Yeah, like I bet you their production's cool, or like they had this great visual, like with their music video. I bet you, if their merch, right? Like if, oh, this artist cares. Like if I go to this show and like I've seen what they post, I've seen their personal style, I bet you their merch is going to be fire. Like all those things, like that to me as a fan, that's value. Like that's a reason to go to a show. But I love that conversation. We talked about it a little bit outside of the podcast of like, it is really interesting, me as a manager, managing artists, like not just grabbing at fans and taking advantage of jacking up prices without adding something to it. I don't think that that lasts in the long term.
Yeah, and you're a really smart manager to recognize that.
Hey, thanks. But no, that's cool to talk to you about that. It's cool to hear that from your side.
And I think that you bring a good point of like, everyone is so accessible now, and I feel like we're reaching an age of music where fans are voting with their engagement. There's no longer a disconnect between what you're listening to. Like it's like almost takes some of the guesswork out of it, which is what makes it so fascinating for me. Is that when you listen to a song, like those numbers in that city will go up, which is like things that you and I have looked at, like how many streams does it take to save a song for your artist? Like how many, like how effective is this playlist for you? How many listeners are you gaining? How many listens per a listener is this song gaining for you?
Yes.
Like all that is not only money, because you technically get paid per stream, right? Or your label gets paid, and then eventually when you recoup.
Totally.
But it's also like, that is willingness to pay.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is a direct translation.
Well, to use an exact example, right? So like we became friends. I met you through Michael at a class. I just dropped in and watched.
I was like, who
incredible.
Is this kid walking in? I don't recognize him. Did I get a new student?
Yeah. And we start talking. I tell you, I work with this band Capstan. You listen, you like it. And we get in touch and you're like, yo, I really like this band. And we were saying like, you don't necessarily get the same data as an artist or a manager gets on like, so here you are, somebody who's great at analyzing data, and you don't necessarily see all of it.
No. And it was so fun working with you on that and like getting into the data exports. And because Spotify and these platforms have made the data so accessible for artists and artist managers. I just don't necessarily agree that they're in the best, again, personal opinion, like they're in the best format. They're not actionable for you, really. Like it's like takes someone, unfortunately, like someone like me to like go in there and like manipulate the data so that it's actionable for you. Right. But I think it's only a matter of time before those companies figure it out.
Oh, 100%. They're so intuitive and it will get there. But for the sake of this conversation, it was really helpful to take, I think the whole point of this podcast to me is like learning how to use data and understand it, use it as a tool and not let it just be an intimidating thing on a spreadsheet that you can't fully grasp. So we start talking, you like this band, I share this data with you, and we would sit down and we'd look at it and we'd learn things, like some of them were obvious, right? Like your top songs are your top songs, but we'd learn things like even to the point where you had this wild discovery that songs that started with like one instrument and just vocals were being listened to more and would get attention faster. And that's not compromising the integrity of the artist to start more songs like that. But then because we had that, the first single we put out, we did the song that they naturally wrote like that. It was just the no-brainer pick of, oh, cool, we have a song like this. Like, let's do that as the first single.
Yeah.
And it was great.
To give more context, like what we did was we looked at your top songs in terms of volume of streams per listener. So like, what are the addicting songs? I think I use the word addicting.
Yeah,
because those are like those are the songs that people were like listening to over and over and over again.
Totally.
Like which songs were those? And then I think the band was with us. Like Anthony, those guys were like all there, and we played the first 10 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds of each song.
Yeah.
And it was that, and there was like a light bulb on the band's face, on your face, and it was like, this is what we need to do.
And that, like, so that for the sake of this conversation and that example, it was the first time that I looked at data as not like feeling like a chore, but like, wow, this is here to help. And that was really cool to me. And I just want to talk about those things with anybody, because you can be a manager, an artist, a fan, anything. Data is very helpful if you know how to use it and if you're looking to like solve the right problems. And that's what I always like about your mind and the way you look at it is you're so good at grasping that, yet you also translate it to English.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, totally. So I think that then the lesson there for artists is like you have very valuable data and you can see like, you know, there's social media. Your fans do tell you what they want and you hear a lot from them. But there's so much data available to analyze and look at and understand and make a better product to then provide value, to then have your fans be willing to pay more and like build a lasting artist, build somebody that can keep charging more for a ticket.
Exactly.
Because you're delivering a better product.
And you have data to help you like see what's working, see what's not. And I think the interesting challenge from like, because again, like Spotify is trying to support 1 million artists off streaming. Like our music economy literally changes with the decision of these giant tech companies. Like this will trickle down to the live side where we're going to see a lot of artists who can sell out those club and theaters because they're all like 1 million artists being supported off Spotify streams alone. Like that's going to produce a lot of these types of artists to play clubs and theaters. But it's also, that's tough for you guys because the small managers do not have the resources to hire like an analyst or hire someone to like look at this data to help them make decisions. So I think there's a real gap out there for those entrepreneurs to like start a company who like is going to provide like a artist data warehouse or like a data, like, because all this data is being kept at Spotify, kept at the ticketing companies, right? Like there's no, you need as an artist manager, like to be able to own your own data, but it's like, you can't manipulate or use data if it's just sitting on your desktop in an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
That's like not scalable. Like you need like a company to like help you guys like ingest it, translate it, transform it, so it's actionable and so it's yours.
Right. And that's like, you know, because with this, I always try to like bring out actionable things that you can do and things. And I think that's a little hard to like answer definitively right now because it's not the easiest to get all the data you need right now. It's not the easiest to analyze it.
They're in so many different places. Like TikTok has I've never even seen a data feed from TikTok.
Right.
But it's like ticketing company, Spotify, also Apple Music has their own reporting platform. It's just like, it's getting harder and harder to like aggregate all the data and make sense of it.
So I guess like on the more positive side of that, like I guess if you're looking at it and you know that you're an artist or you're something with data, like what's our takeaway here? Like I think the big piece that we talked about is providing more value and not just raising prices and being like, oh, I'm more popular, demand a higher ticket price, because then you'll burn out your audience and you're not going to have a lasting fan base.
That's my opinion about it. Like, I think it's really, we're all grabbing for $1. Like, we should make the pie bigger, grab for $100. Like, make it so everybody wins, not just one person.
Elaborate on that a little bit more, because that's big.
So instead of just keeping the ceiling the same, like the ticket is $1, make the ticket, like the fan is willing to pay $1 for a ticket. Yeah. The fan's willing to pay $100 for a ticket, prices increase without like cutting into that fans like surplus. You know what I mean? It's just making to have more collective value so everybody wins versus just just one, like the fan not winning. Because I think a lot, like with all these consolidations happening with concert promoters getting bought up and like everything becoming one giant company, who's looking out for the fan?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that piece. And it's easily overlooked because oftentimes as you get into a career in music, you are no longer the fan. And you kind of forget that we all started as the fan. And when
We
you
all started as
actually
fans.
stop and think about it, you're like, oh, it kind of sucks to be like taxed as the fan. Like you're the one that's making it possible.
Yeah, and it's like be more an artist representation or on the artist side, like just be more strategic. Like the most obvious answer is often the wrong one. Like don't just take the biggest check. Like think about strategically what this means for you. And there's there's various differentiation strategies. Like you could just like focus on a pure cost strategy, and that's like optimizing operations, making it cheaper to produce content so you can make more money. Or you could actually just differentiate via like creating more value and being like a true differentiator that's harder to imitate than just focusing on just the cost. And I may be like getting into like way too academia at the moment, too much theory. But
I like it, but
it's just like there's different strategies that you can take, and I feel like the value creation strategy is more people win.
It's cool to hear that from you, right? Like I think that you're qualified to say that. Again, we're talking on your opinions, but for somebody that sees so much data and sees this shift happening, it's cool to hear that. And I think that's a very valuable thing to talk about and be aware of, regardless of the side of the industry you're on. And as we talk about it, and as I think about it, I guess the piece where data weighs into that and where there's something to like conclude on data is if your goal is to bring more value, then data is there to help you.
Yes.
And maybe there's not the best ways yet to define it and to read all of it. And not all of us have a Vivian Wang mastermind to give your Spotify data to and analyze these things. That if your goal and your intent isn't just to collect data because somebody says so, but to think like this is your product and you're trying to provide value, and this is a tool to guide you in the right direction, and use it where you can.
And it's so powerful because like going back to like how I feel like you and I started, it all started with a song. It's all started with the music that really moved and touched you.
Yeah.
To like be able to use data to influence that is for me like full circle.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. Like you're responsible for the single that came out in the order that it did because you took the time to analyze something and learn about it and learn why it worked.
And that like makes my heart explode.
That's awesome. And that's another kind of full circle thing in the conversation of like, there are so many jobs out here and there's so many things where I don't have any musical talent, but I love music and I love working in it. You found your path, you tried a bunch of things and you found what you love. And I love spreading that it's like you feel so fulfilled off of analyzing data and you ended up making a really cool impact in a band's career. So I think that message to people that are aspiring to work in it, or people that want more inspiration in their daily work, whatever, that's cool to me. Like
thank you for saying that. I mean, and being able to help you guys develop and help grow the content, like that's the content drives the willingness to pay, the ticket sales. It all comes full circle. So it's like
that's huge.
Making good music helps everything. It's all about the music.
That's cool. That's cool that it comes back to something so real.
Yeah, it's real.
So another question that I wanted, and I feel like you're qualified to kind of weigh in with, is you did take the college path and you now teach a course.
Teach 2 classes, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, 2. And I think that there's a lot of people that do a lot of studying and you're looking at this and it seems very intimidating. And it seems very much like, where do I start? And maybe it isn't as intuitive as Vivian being like, oh, I'm just going to book shows and manage bands. Like maybe you're like, yo, this seems scary and this is a lot of pressure. So coming out of school, coming out of education, what are some things that you maybe you're taught in class, but what are some of the things that you wouldn't expect, or some core skills that you could really double down on that would be universally helpful? I hope that's not too broad of a question.
So just to clarify, just skills that you should develop before you get into the music business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Core skills that you should have.
This varies depending which part of the industry you're going in, because this is like a pretty difficult question to answer. Because like if you're going into like publishing, you don't necessarily need the same skills as going into like being a tour manager.
Fair.
You know? But if I were to really think about the basics, like knowing Excel.
Yeah. Like, maybe I should say if somebody's interested in doing something close to what you're doing. Because that's what you know, right? Like that's easier to answer. Sure,
yeah, much easier to answer. If you're looking to like get into like data or technology apps, and
yes,
one thing though I think it's like really people don't know product management. They don't really understand that. Product people, the best way I can explain this role is like product people are romantics. They see a vision in a future where people are working at least I do, like at their most optimal levels.
Yeah.
And like creating apps to help do that and like save time, like that is that's like a romantic view of like what product people do. Like they optimize and they like, get to it. I guess like skill set, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there. Skill set would be like knowing Excel formulas, as simple as like writing like emails. Like it's the number one way we communicate, and just knowing how to like structure an email so it's readable.
Yeah.
And like even using just like Outlook calendar, like knowing to not like just seeing that.
Yeah.
Getting really familiar with Microsoft suite of tools is like, it's going to help you in whatever role.
I love that. That's awesome. Like it's very basic things. Like you can almost overlook that, right? Like,
and I'm happy to like send you an Excel tutorial if you want to share with your listeners. Like if they want to see that Excel tutorial, like I'll send it to you.
Oh, cool. Please do. Yeah. So then if you're listening and you're trying to improve and you're trying to build your skill set on Excel. These are the
formulas that you should learn.
Cool. So hit me, DM me. I will send it to anybody who's interested, and I will probably revisit that myself just to make sure that I'm operating on every level. I do a lot of work in Excel, and I'm always like, I could probably do this better. There's probably a formula here.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I love that. That's a great answer. I think my last thing, and I love this episode, and it's a fun one for me because it feels like a discussion on topics that we can't necessarily fully answer, but it's just something that I like to talk about, bring awareness to, and it's a side of it.
Remind people that like to pay attention to these trends.
Yeah.
Like if you're a young person in the industry, like, and this is what I actually told my class like 2 weeks ago, pay attention to what's happening with these big companies. When Spotify made that announcement, you should automatically like be thinking or like the announcement of like 1 million listeners or 1 million content creators being supported on Spotify. Like that should get you to, oh my God, there's going to be a fuck ton of club shows. Or like all these decisions that are being made either by the government or the tech, like government, the DOJ is re-looking into that Ticketmaster Live Nation merger. Like, did anyone look at that? Like, what does this mean to you as a person in this community, this music industry community? Like I think that's really important as someone like trying to get in or like being even in the business, to be paying attention to these things and thinking about how like it's going to change the landscape and how you're going to strategically either take advantage of that or like operate within those confines.
That's huge. That's huge because it's...
And that's like what I try to teach my students at USC is like how to strategically connect the dots, because it's such an important skill, and this industry is just constantly changing.
Right. Yeah, it's a more universal skill. Like if you can look at anything, if you can look at news, if you can look at technology changing this equaling this, and just have the skill to think with it.
Yep.
To say like, okay, cool, this does this, what's that mean? It's almost like chess, right? It's like, okay, cool, what's the next move?
Yeah.
And then if you can think with that, then you can kind of get strategic and be like, well, I would assume all these people are making money off Spotify. They're exposed to all these people. They're going to have a new fan base. So a lot of people could tour clubs. Clubs are going to get saturated. How do I then stand out amongst those? How do I warrant people spending money on my tickets? Because kids are only going to have fans. I always say kids. I feel like that's not demeaning. That's fans are going to only have such a budget for live music.
How are you going to differentiate your band and create specific value for your fans? I think you as a manager do such a fucking great job of that. Like,
yeah, gas me up. Let's go.
No, but seriously, like you as a manager, like when you guys announced that tour and you personally you looked at the data, messaged those biggest fans, put them on the guest list. Like that took time and effort, but you took it, and those fans are gonna be fans for fucking life.
Oh yeah, so I guess
to follow you.
To explain that, just so anybody listening, so we had a band announce a headline tour, and I thought, okay, cool, this is one of their first headliners. I want it to be special. I have all this data from their merchandise sales online. Let's find the top kids. Let's send them an email. We have their email address, and let's just guest list them to a show. And the idea behind that is like, those people are clearly supporting us and giving us tons of money. Guest list on a headliner, you have some extra spots. Thank them. Like that's something that you can give back to them. And I think that that value, like, it's probably not
increasing that willingness to pay. Like those kids are going to come back and
that's
buy
to
merch,
me,
buy everything.
I just want them to tell their friends. I want them to say, hey, this is a band that I really believe in, and they're good people, and I'm going to be back at their next show too. And I think that that's maybe my version of trying to think what things equal or whatever. Anyway, thank you. So my last question, and I ask it just because I think a lot of people struggle, and a lot of people, I mean, we all have such hard times, and like you're 9 years in and you're finding your spot. But was there ever a time in your career in music, even with the love that you had for it, where you were just like, fuck, I don't know about this? Like, did you ever have a moment? So if you had that moment, what it was, and just like, if you could go back and tell that kid at that low advice now, or like your perspective now, what would you tell that person or that version of you?
So do you want me to tell the story?
You can tell the story, or just tell me briefly, like where you were at, like what happened.
It was in the Bay, and I had put on a show in a band that I really believed in out of Bakersfield, California, like literally the armpit of California. Just kidding.
That place is sketchy.
Oh, okay.
Like, sorry to anybody that lives and loves Bakersfield, but like,
listeners from Bakersfield, sorry.
Well, okay, I should say that I've heard so many people, like, I've heard that there's like crazy like murder stories, and there's like a lake that like I don't know, man. Maybe I'm watching too many Forensic Files or anything, but
so it was this band that I like really believed in, brought them up to the Bay, did a show with them. Crushed. I got crushed. They didn't sell any tickets, but the music was so good, and I so believed in it. And I just remember sitting outside of the venue and just like looking at my losses and being like, oh shit, this is horrible. And I never want to feel like this again. Like how, like, I love this business so much, but like taking a hit like that when you're like 17, it was like horrifying.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I didn't know what to do from there, because I was like, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I could do another night like this. And I feel like so like the question is like, what would I tell myself?
Yeah, so like there you are at that low. Like,
I was sitting outside the curb, literally outside the venue, like 1 a.m.
Took a loss, and you're just like, fuck this.
Yeah, it was horrifying.
What's your advice to that low, or like where's the like it gets better moment?
Oh, okay. All right. So like and I feel like you're so good at this, but every failure is an opportunity to learn. So for me, it was like, yeah, I fucked up. This failed. But what were my learnings? How can I prevent myself from like from this from happening again? And that's not to say like you shouldn't dwell on your feelings or like how you feel, because like I don't know about you, but like when we grow up as kids, there was this saying like, fuck feelings. Like, I hate feelings. I don't want to feel. But I did so much of that as a kid, of like not wanting to feel anything.
Yeah.
And so, but that's so much of human life is feeling.
Yeah.
So I would have told myself to like feel the feelings, like sit with them, be sad, because it's valuable to feel sad. because it's part of life, and then like move on in a productive way, like think about like what are the next steps. And I think eventually like I got there of like trying to like delving into the data, and like that much of a crushing loss was for me, and that was my only one. I like had a few more that was like so terrible that then like made me go the path that I went. But I would have told myself to like sit with the feelings, like like learn this lesson and be, go from there, like learn more.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of answered it in the story you tell, right? Like you at a very young age realized that that part of the career and business was not what you wanted to do.
I was way too risk averse. I don't have the grit.
Yeah. But it's cool because here you are like living a very happy life, doing a job that you love. So at that moment, you're like,
Yeah.
cool, I'm out all this money. This sucks. But now it was proof and it showed you a path that you really didn't want to do. And now you found something so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely love it, and I still love working with like our buyers and our bookers, and like working with them on the data stuff, and I love working with the managers too, like with you, and like I think the next exciting part is like what we're doing, which is like how can data inform content decisions.
That's cool. Yeah.
And artist development. That is like so fascinating to me.
It's fun. Like the things that we do, because like, there's no structure to what we're trying out and looking at. It's purely like this like friendship science experiment where it's like, all right, like what can we make of this? Like, is there anything valuable here?
Mm-hmm. Is there something here?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for doing this. I feel like we had a great episode.
Well, thank you so much. I don't know. I've never done this before, so like I have nothing to compare it to. But this has been fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really do. Like you killed it, and it's cool. And I love conversations like this, and hopefully people enjoy us.
I know. I hope that you listening. Thank you for listening, and hopefully it was valuable.
Perfect. Cool. 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 Cool.